Hi guys, it's really great to be here, thank you for having me. I wrote my first book when I was perhaps 9 or 10 years old. It was an absolute masterpiece, that book was. It had chapters, it had pictures, it had a cover, it had two covers actually, a front one and a back one, and it even had a binding of sorts, and I was very, very proud of it. I have no idea what happened to that book, which is a source of great sadness to me, but it kicked off a lifelong love affair with writing. So as the great late Terry Pratchett said, writing is the most fun you can have by yourself. It's true. So obviously, after that, I didn't write another book for 25 years. What I did do instead was I fell off a horse. I went to college, I dropped out of college, I went back to college again, I got fired from a job, I got another job and I got fired from that one too. And then I started a business and ran away with the circus. Then something happened. In 2015, I had been running my business for 2 or 3, 4 years maybe, and I was just a little bit fed up. I was stagnating, I was kind of bumping along, scraping together enough money to pay the bills every month. I'm really getting a bit fed up about the whole thing. And so in one of my mentoring groups, one of my mentors years ago had said write a book, and I'd gone, no. My other mentor said write a book, and I went, no. I had to think about it for a bit, came back to one of the mentoring meetings and stood in front of everyone and boldly declared, guys, I'm going to write my book. And not only that, I'm going to do it in 90 days. Resistance be damned, procrastination be damned, I'm going to do it. So I went away, cried a little bit, swore a little bit, and wrote my book. 90 days later, I came back and stood in front of that group of people with my book in my hands because I discovered something. When you stand up in front of a group of people that you respect and admire and tell them you're going to do something, you kind of have to do it or you feel like a little bit of a twit. So that was quite a good incentive for me to do it. But when I stood there with my book in my sweaty little hands, this book, in fact, the one that's on your table, I realised that that's when the real hard work begins. Because what I do and what I help business owners to do isn't just to write a book. It's not just to get published. It's not a vanity exercise. This isn't about getting your name in print, although it is fan-bloody-tastic when your book arrives and it says Vicky Fraser on the front of it. It's really exciting, and your husband sits there and says, I can't believe you're a bloody author. Because that is pretty cool. But that's not really what it's about. It's not just about being a glorified business card. It's not just about getting published, whether you do it traditionally or whether you do it self-published. It's actually about changing the world. And I don't say that lightly. I really don't. Books change worlds. Words change worlds. Books change lives. You know, you only have to look at, probably the most famous book in the world is the Bible, and that's a giant sales letter. Look how well that's done. The media, every day, words change worlds, words change lives. They shape the way we see the world and they shape what we do. And so books are incredible. Like I said, it's a lifelong love affair that I've had with books, with writing, with words. And I help business owners just like you to write your books and change your own lives and change your clients' lives in some small way as well. Because changing the world, it's not all about stopping a war or starting a war or eradicating world poverty overnight or changing an unjust law. All those things do change the world, but they don't happen overnight. They don't happen all in one big go. They happen after one tiny beetle step, one tiny step. One tiny thought, one idea that somebody has and decides, I'm going to make the world a better place. I'm going to change things. I'm going to make the world better. And, maybe the next world-changing thing will be an idea that starts in your head, that comes from your head and into a book that you decide to write, that you reach, your first 10 people with, and then 100 people, and then 1,000 people. And maybe the tiny change that you can create in somebody's life can go on to make them have an amazing life. And again, this is the kind of thing that has genuinely surprised me, because when I wrote my book, I really, I didn't know as much about it as I do now. Obviously, this is what I do. But I wrote the book that I wished that I'd had. It says, the tagline is, from scraping the bottom to 6 figures in just 6 months. And if I was going to write it again, I'd write a better tagline. But that is the story of me starting my business. And it's the book that I wish that I had had when I started out. Everybody in this room presumably is a business owner, yeah? And when you first start, you haven't got a clue what you're doing, right? It's terrifying. You're just floundering around and you're thinking, God, where do I even start? What do I do next? And why am I struggling so much? And, why has Richard Branson got a bloody island and a Learjet? And why haven't I? And, what's the difference? And so that got me thinking, what have I learned in my first few years of running a business, and how can I help other people who are in my position? Which is why I wrote my book. And I've had messages back from people I can give you an example. A lady called Cyan, who was on benefits, wanted to start a dog business, is just paying off her debts, and she sent me a message that had me bawling my eyes out just before Christmas, saying that she has had her best Christmas with her son ever. For the first time, she's been able to buy some treats for them, some presents, without going into debt, and she's now paying off her debt. She's now a member of my business group, my paid-for business group, because she has made enough money to do that, because she did everything that I said to do in this book. And that is worth far more to me than my six-figure business. And obviously, one of my old mentors said, the money is a silent applause for a job well done. It's so true. But what really gets me excited is that I wrote this book and it has changed people's lives. And I'm not saying anything particularly new or clever, it's the stuff that I've learned. Which brings me on to my next question. Has anybody in this room written a book? Has anyone thought about writing a book? What's stopping you?
Making that commitment and taking time out to do it.
Okay. Well, it doesn't take as much time as you might think. I'm a writer, so it's what I do. But writing a book in 90 days is more than possible. If you want to write it in 6 months or 12 months, then an hour a day is enough. One of the other common, excuses, and I'm going to call it an excuse as well, for not writing a book is, I haven't got anything new or interesting to say. I hear that a lot. And I'm here to tell you that if that's what you're thinking, it's all been said, there's articles on the internet, all the rest of it, it's all been said, I haven't got anything new to say. That's nonsense, because it might have all been said, but it hasn't been said by you. And when you write a book, you're not just regurgitating facts and figures from the internet, from information that frankly is freely available. You can't find anything in my book fact-wise that isn't available freely elsewhere. But that's not why people have bought my book. That's not why people read it. People read it because they want my take on it, they want my experience, they want my opinions, and they want to know why I believe what I believe. We don't relate to facts and figures. If you remember back to your school days when you were rammed full of facts and figures, how much of it do you now remember? Probably not an awful lot that you don't use every day. But when a teacher told you a story, I remember in a history class, one of my teachers, instead of just giving us the facts and figures about World War I trenches, he showed us Blackadder. Do you remember the episode where they go over the top? That stuck with me, and that sparked off a lifelong interest in history and the World Wars, and I studied history at university. So that was the beginning of that. People are interested in your story. They're interested in your take on things, in your opinion, why you believe it. I don't know about you, but when you Google stuff, when I Google something, I'm a messy browser. I end up with several thousand tabs open. I don't really know where to go and how to decide what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So once I've become completely overwhelmed with the information available to me, I go find a book on a bookshelf. I find a book that covers everything that I want to know, that answers the questions that I want to know, and it comes from somebody who's been there and done that. That's the value that your book can bring to the world. You might also be thinking, how do I know who to trust? How do I know who to trust? There's information freely available everywhere on the internet, so why would somebody pay for my book where it's all been said? Well, look, if you've literally written the book on the subject, that kind of makes you an expert. So, people are going to want to hear from you. They're not going to want to hear from, a faceless person on Google. They're really not. And finally, it builds a relationship with people. If you think about where do you read books? Because I read books in the bath. I don't wear clothes in the bath. That's kind of intimate. People read books on the toilet. Don't get much more intimate than that. People read books in bed. And it might seem a little bit flippant, but that builds a really, really strong relationship, because if people are reading what you have to say in your voice, with your personality, it's like they're there with you, which, when I put it like that, sounds kind of creepy. But people who meet me after they've read my book say, oh my God, you sound exactly like you do in your book. I feel like I know you, and they'll talk to me about stuff. I've never met this person before. They'll talk to me about aspects of my life. They'll ask me how the trapeze is going. They'll ask me how my sheep are. All sorts of stuff. And I'm kind of like backing away into a corner thinking, who are you? But that's the effect it has. People then want to work with you because they feel like they know you. You've built up this relationship with them. And you've done it all with a book from a distance. I've got people in New Zealand, Australia, America, Canada who have read my book and are now working with me because of that. So if you were thinking, maybe I'll write a book, if you're thinking, I could never write a book, you absolutely can, and I would argue that you should, because if you are not writing your book and putting your story out there and helping as many people as you possibly can to improve their lives, I would argue that you've actually got, a bit of an obligation to do that, because otherwise you're withholding. Yeah. If you could change somebody's life for the better, why wouldn't you? So who here thinks now that maybe they could write a book? Come on, guys, more of you than that. Awesome. And for everybody else who hasn't put their hands up yet, I will convince you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day and for the rest of your life. So thank you very much, guys. It's been lovely to be here. I really, really hope that you'll go away and think seriously about what you know, what you can offer to the world, and how you can put it into a book and get it out there. Because it can change not just your life, but other people's lives as well. Thank you.